Yeah, sure. I can.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
This is a regularly scheduled public session of the Woodridge Board of Education and is in compliance with the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, also known as the Sunshine Law. This meeting has been approved by resolution adopted at the reorganization meeting held on January 3rd, 2022. Notification has been sent to the record. Notification has also been posted in the Woodridge Borough Hall, the Woodridge Memorial Library, tapinto.net, and the Woodridge Board of Education website. Please be advised that all or portion of this meeting is being live streamed in real time and will be recorded for rebroadcasting at a future date. Roll call. Okay.
Mr. Biamonte.
Here.
Mr. Fallon.
Here.
Mr. Garvin.
Here.
Mr. Nieves is absent. Mr. O'Byrne.
Here.
And Mr. Vaccaro was absent.
Okay, on to the superintendent's report, Mr. Abel.
Good evening, everyone. My report is rather short this evening. Obviously, in our schools right now, we have our recreation programs as well as our school district programs in various schools within the district. At the same time, our building and grounds crew are working on cleaning certain areas of the school and moving people around so that we're all ready to go come September. Recently, the district has received word from the state of New Jersey regarding the grade 11 graduation proficiency exam, which was administered in the spring, and they have announced that that test will not count for anything. They're going to use it as a field test. So as of right now, the class of 23 does not have a state assessment requirement for graduation, and I don't expect that to change. However, I do expect to see more information from the state shortly. We have not received results from that test, and I'm not quite certain yet if we're going to receive the results from those tests. The state does plan to continue the Start Strong assessment this springtime, and that begins in grade 4 and moves up into the high school. We did it initially last year, and the purpose of Start Strong is to give some initial data to be used to make interventions as necessary in preparation for the state assessment in the spring. On our agenda tonight, we have some various appointments for new personnel, replacing personnel that are no longer in the district. We still have some vacancies, and all of our principals are working on gathering candidates for interviews, etc. We also are graciously accepting 2 donations this evening. One is out of a collaboration between the police department and the school district. We were one of the first school districts and police department municipalities in the state to receive a resiliency training for Handle with Care. And coming out of that training, we received a $5,000 donation from that group for sort of being the first groups involved. And that money is intended for a community-wide event, which is something my office is working on now. We also this evening are accepting a donation from the Woodridge Public Education Foundation, and it's intended for our district-wide performing arts program. And I'm sure the board is along with me to thank both groups for their donation. Mr. Fallon, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Albro. And yes, we certainly are all on board and thank both organizations for that generous donation to us. Okay, approval of minutes. Upon recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education approves minutes for the following meeting: executive and work session meetings, executive and public session meetings, June 13th and 28th, June 28th, 2022. Is there a motion? Mr. Garvin? Mr. Biamonte? Roll call?
Mr. Fallon.
Yes.
Mr. Garvin.
Yes.
Mr. O'Byrne.
Yes.
Mr. Vaccaro is absent. Mr. Biamonte.
Yes.
And Mr. Nieves is absent.
Trustees, is it okay if I just read through the agenda? All right. Yeah, it's a short one tonight. So for curriculum and instruction, we have approval of out-of-district placements, another approval of out-of-district placements. Personnel, we have approval of personnel appointment, another approval of personnel appointment, approval of personnel appointment for summer 2022 curriculum writing, approval of staff transfers 2022-2023, acceptance of resignation, Lauren Morin, acceptance of resignation, Deborah Servert, approval of co-curricular appointment for the 2022-2023 school year for before care, approval of appointment of care personnel 2022-2023, approval of personnel reappointment 2022-2023 substitutes, approval of WRHS co-curricular appointments for 2022-2023 school year, approval of Doyle co-curricular appointments for the 2022-2023 school year. Under policy, we have approval of policies, approval of regulations, both are second readings. For buildings and grounds, we have none at this time. For finance, we have approval of the bills list, approval of the monthly financial reports of the board secretary and treasurer, approval of certification of a balanced budget, approval of budget transfers, approval of acceptance of donations. For board operations, we have approval of dispose of equipment at WRIS, approval of acceptance of grant, Italian American Committee on Education, IACE, approval to renew the appointment of school physician for the 2022-2023 school year, and approval of joint agreement with Care Plus New Jersey, Inc., and Woodridge BOE and Moonachie BOE for the 2022-2023 school year. All right, anything for new business, gentlemen? Okay, open up to hearing of citizens for resolutions only.
Bonnie Taylor, 64 Woodridge Street. I have a question, and this is just as a teacher and educator in general. It's not just specifically for Woodridge, but the just cause, let me see, I'm sorry. The just cause policy that has just been put in place, where we can request for educators to have a psychiatric or medical evaluation based on observation. Who's observing the educator to see that they need a probable cause or a cause for a medical evaluation?
Give me a second, Mr. Taylor,
Sure.
to turn to that policy. At the outset, I would say initially, it would be observations made by a building level administrator as to something perhaps being out of the order.
Okay. So I guess I have more questions. And again, this is just specific for all educators. Is there a procedural in place for this new clause for all BOEs to? And so is there a step-by-step process as how we're going to evaluate educators, whether they need a medical or psychiatric evaluation?
I would anticipate, and Mr. Roberts can jump in if he'd like, I would anticipate that moving forward, now that the policy has been revised,
Mhm.
I'm sure the state is going to put forward some sort of practice to use to conduct the execution of this policy.
Right, and then after that, we would develop our own regulation based on whatever guidance we get from the state.
Okay. I appreciate that. And then I just want to make sure that we're not in violation of HIPAA in any situation here, because we are asking for a teacher's medical and psychiatric records. Who will have the access to that confidential information?
Most likely our school physician. Obviously, once it's determined where the examination will take place, what practice, et cetera, the information will be shared with our school physician, and our school physician will share with me what is pertinent to the existing cause and the employee's status.
And none of that information will be shared with the Board of Education members. Okay. Thank you so much.
Anyone else? Hearing none, seeing none, closing the hearing of citizens. Trustees, looking for your approval, Moonachie included, for resolutions for curriculum instruction number 2, Personnel 1, 3, 5, 9, 10. Policy 1 and 2. Finance 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Board operations 2, 3, and 4. Can I get a nomination? Mr. Garvin, second. Mr. O'Byrne, roll call.
Fallon,
Yes.
Mr. Garvin,
Yes.
Mr. O'Byrne,
Yes.
Mr. Vaccaro is absent, Mr. Biamonte,
Yes.
and Mr. Nieves is absent.
Okay, for Woodridge only, resolutions, curriculum instruction number 1, personnel 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 11. Nothing for policy, nothing for buildings and grounds, nothing for finance, board operations number 1. Nominations, Mr. Garvin, Mr. O'Byrne, roll call.
Mr. Fallon,
Yes.
Mr. Garvin,
Yes.
Mr. O'Byrne,
Yes.
Mr. Vaccaro is absent, Mr. Biamonte,
Yes.
Mr. Nieves is absent.
Okay, anything for communications? No, and there are no questions online, correct, Ms. Murray?
Correct.
Okay. Anything for unfinished business? No. Okay, open up the hearing of citizens for anything you want to talk about.
Hi, Ryan Guglielmotti, 2 Rose Street. I just had a question regarding, just to solidify some information during sidewalk discussions up at Doyle during the extended school year. Is it possible to get enrollment numbers tonight and what the upcoming projected enrollment looks like at the K1 and 2 level?
I could give you estimates.
Okay,
Kindergarten, as of last Friday, was at 100. This is coming into kindergarten.
okay,
I believe the kindergarten moving into first grade, I believe, is a little bit over 100. And the first to second is probably closer to 120.
okay. In addition to the discussion about enrollment increase, there's also a special education discussion regarding services, that there were going to be more services offered and that has been somewhat condensed. I wanted to confirm if that's a staffing issue, a budgetary issue, or why those condensements are happening, especially at the self-contained placements.
Mrs. G, you'd have to fill me in on the condensed part.
Sure. So when it was my son received services and discussions during IEP meetings, there was a projected kindergarten 1 self-contained placement classroom projected for next year. I've been through the grapevine told that that is now going to look more like a K1-2 or possibly a 1-2-3 self-contained placement, which seems like a vast age and grade discrepancy for self-contained services.
I can't account for the word on the street,
Okay,
but when I last checked with my building principal, that was not the case.
okay. Okay, so that there would still be a
The
smaller.
last discussion that I had with the principal involved the K-1 group that you were talking about.
Okay, okay, great. Thank you for that.
Anyone else?
Bonnie Taylor, 64 Woodridge Street. I just wanted to say what a great job, what a loss it is for the district to lose Miss Morin. I thought she was a fabulous member of the child study team, and I hope that we find a replacement for her soon. But I wanted to thank the BOE for accepting the Woodridge Public Education Foundation's donation for the arts, and we truly hope that it goes towards the arts because that's what it's intended for. After 7 years of volunteer service, I'm resigning as the executive secretary, but I believe that the foundation adds value to this community. I believe that it supports the students and it's all about the students. And I wish those who continue with the foundation much success. And I hope that moving forward, the board will be more communicative and collaborative with the foundation in their endeavors to raise funds for our community. Thank you.
Anyone else? Hearing none, seeing none, closing the hearing of citizens. I am going to piggyback on Ms. Taylor's comment. The foundation, as part of the original founding members of the foundation, did do a lot of good for the town of Woodridge. I do hope that at some point it does continue on. Hopefully we can get some new blood in there and get things going. It is a good part of our community that we will really sorely miss. So hopefully you guys can get that going again and bring that back to us. Gentlemen, anything else to add? No. Motion to adjourn? Mr. Garvin, second. Mr. O'Byrne, thank you.